Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, time! 3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Float game for the win! Ayler's gone! Goodbye, touchdown, Indy! Woo! America! They got a football team now!
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday. Glad to have you along and glad to have Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox, and Big Ten Networks. It is your time of year, man. Your time to shine, Mr. Bracket Analyst.
It's quite a week. I now that I'm doing this element of the job, I feel a little bit like what a coach must feel like. Because
you got the nerves. You got the nerves.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, you think about all the things that you have to consider and all the things that are going on, and of course,
it's like a game plan. You got to develop your own game plan.
You do, and it is it is a challenge for sure. When I got into this, nobody told me there would be scoring it. I just thought I'd be explaining the process and trying to come close and then all of a sudden we've got this bracket matrix and they keep count. And I don't really love that except when I do well.
You'll have to bring on Scotty Davenport with you. He joins us later on, but he's just retired.
Yes, I saw that. Congratulations to Scott. He is a wonderful man, a wonderful coach, and happy he's getting a chance to retire on his own terms.
Isn't he one of the greatest people in the business? Seriously.
Absolutely.
I mean, just a great personality. He needs to
really
be on PR for somebody. He has the great personality. But if I was him, I'd be on a beach, baby.
Yes, I would too.
Mai Tai in one hand and a remote in the other. What?
Wait, what are you remoting if you're on the beach?
Well, you still got to watch the tournament when the tournament's on. You don't have to work it. You can watch it and just put your arms back.
Oh, yes.
Be a lot easier. And it is here. It is here. The Big Ten tournament, or there are tournaments around that have already started, completed. Big Ten tournament, of course, starts tomorrow, ends on Sunday. And then the big reveal on the NCAA tournament. But I think this is going to be like the least shocking or surprising as far as the teams that don't make it. It's kind of narrowed down to, and you know better than me, but there are years where you've got so many bid stealers and unknowns. There seems to be less unknowns this year. Things seem to be kind of playing out before our eyes.
Well, unless they introduce unknowns into the process. I mean, you won't find almost any. And I can tell you exactly how many online brackets right now have North Carolina. 15 out of 108 that the Matrix has posted right now have Carolina in there. And then it goes down from there. Beyond Carolina, there's nobody that's in more than 5 of those 108 brackets.
But first of all, why are there 108?
Well, I mean, what the Matrix does is they gather everybody that does it and puts it online that they can find.
But is there 108 people that are worthy of being considered for that?
Well, I will say this, Jim, that I haven't studied them all. It's really hard to go through all of them, right? But because by the end of the week, we probably will have 200. Usually they're around 200. And I don't know what their processes are, but they all generally do pretty well. Generally. like and there is usually some consensus to what is done.
That's probably they're all copying off of you.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they do. I doubt it. But my point is that by the time we get to the end of the week, like last year, the year before that, we all basically missed one team, and we all basically missed the same team, give or take. I think there were 30 exceptions last year. Most of us had Oklahoma in the field. Out of 200 or so, there were about 170 Oklahomas and about 30 Virginias. And make it 31 because the committee had Virginia and they put them in. And it's been that way for multiple seasons in a row right now. So you look at what's done online and you can get a pretty good read on what you mentioned about that unanimity. We've never had this degree of unanimity before, I don't think, where Carolina is sitting there with 15 votes, so to speak, and the least that anybody that's in the field has is closer to, I can tell you the last team in the field is right now Xavier, and they are on 95 of 108. And Ohio State is further behind them is further ahead of them in the rankings, but they're on 92 brackets out of 108. So there's no guarantee at this point that those teams will get in. And thank you, Fred, for the nice greeting. There's no guarantee that those teams get in, but there's clearly not much behind them to put in.
Yeah, and I'm just looking forward to it. I cannot wait. It is the best time of year. It is the best time in America. It is the best time in the world. this month, it has just become an entity of itself, and I love it. How can you not? It's just it just brings so much craziness. I hope we have the upsets that we normally have, which I don't know how you would not, but last night I was asking a friend, I'm like, who you got in the Final Four? And just for kicks, and because I'm thinking, boy, it's hard to go against chalk. It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick an outlier. I mean, it's hard to go against Auburn. It's hard to go against Florida. It's hard to go against some of these teams that have just been so wicked all season. And I'm like, somebody's going to lose. I don't like Alabama to get to the Final Four. Not that they're not great, but that's how tough it is. They are really good, but I see just enough suspect in them because they'll get knocked off by, say, Auburn or Tennessee. Tennessee, here's another team. The SEC has got so many teams that can win the national championship this year. It's crazy. I think they have 3 different teams that can win the national championship.
Which 3 are they?
Florida, Auburn, and Tennessee.
Okay. It's an interesting theory, and I can't say that that's not true. I can say that there are elements of those 3 teams that make me wonder if that team can go there. And
that's why I don't put Alabama in it. Not that they're not great and not that they can't do it. I'm like, okay, I've got to cut somebody.
Right. And I get it. But Tennessee's offense remains somewhat bulky, not to the degree that they have been at times under Rick Barnes, but still not elite. Auburn, I don't like the way they play the point guard situation. I want a guy in charge. I want somebody that is the guy. That's what usually wins. I can't remember. I looked it up. I mean, I went back years and years and years, all the way back to like early 90s. And only one team in that entire period had anyone other than their point guard lead them in assists. Only one team. And that was North Carolina 2017, when Joel Berry was like 0.1 behind one of his teammates. And every other team led in assists by their point guard, because that's how it works when you are the best team. or one of the best teams. And Auburn does not do that. They play multiple point guards, attack you from multiple angles. I kind of like having that guy in charge because that's what wins. It's what has won. And I'm big on what has won because these precedents keep repeating themselves over time. These qualifications. Who's your NBA first round draft pick? Who is that? Because we've got nearly 40 years of that, of no exceptions to the first round draft pick rule. Going back to who? Come on, you can name him, Jim. Come on. Sitting where you are, you better name him.
All the way back to 40?
No, I said 40, nearly 40 years. So who was the last NCAA champion with no first round pick on their roster in their rotation? Who was it?
Well, Indiana did in 87.
That's it. That's the last one.
No first rounders. That's right. Steve Alford was like a second round pick.
He was one of the first picks of the second round. Now he would be
also the last team to win a national championship that does not have names on their jerseys now.
Hey, I have pointed out that is actually somewhat not true. And I will tell you why.
I know Kansas won it, but they currently have names on their jerseys.
But Kansas, in a real oddity that year, wore names on their jerseys at home, but not on the road. I don't get it. And so when they were playing in the final, I believe they were wearing their road jerseys, and I'm pretty sure that they did not have names. So you couldn't tell who Danny Manning was. It was a complete mystery, and I think that's why Oklahoma
had to get a program. Yeah. Had to get a program. That's
so those things.
That was the old Chicago White Sox owner back in the days that didn't want names on their jerseys so he could sell programs, I think.
Oh my gosh. That's great stuff. But those things usually recur. And I look at Tennessee. And Tennessee violates a standard that now is in place since 1997, which is every champion save for it over a full season. I throw Baylor out in 21 because the numbers were skewed by the shortened season and by COVID pauses and all of that. So I throw them out. And one of the reasons I throw them out is because they don't fit the top 20 defense standard. And they literally were the best defense in any Final Four I've ever covered. So it doesn't work. The numbers were skewed. But over the course of a full season, only one team has ever won it since 97, which is when Ken Palm's database goes back to. One team has not been top 20 offense and defense in efficiency. And that was UConn 2014, which had the 39th ranked offense. And everybody else has been top 20 in both. And to be honest with you, most of them have been very close to the top in both categories. You have a lot of one in this, two in that by the time they won it. So that's another concern when you look at various teams. And that's why I brought Tennessee up. Now, they could go out and score 100 3 games in a row in Nashville and get their rating up, or they could go out in the tournament and score 100 6 games in a row. And by the end of the year, they'll certainly have a top 20 offense. But I think it gives you a hint about what to worry about, at least in terms of who could win 6 games and who probably won't.
Who is there a team that fits matrix wise the numbers better, or metrics wise the numbers better than anybody else?
Well, I mean, it's Duke, and Duke fits all the categories pretty much.
But is that because they have played in an extraordinarily weak conference all season long? I know they're good, and I think that they're a good team. I don't see Duke winning a national championship. I don't think that they can beat the teams that have more experience, I guess, even though Cooper Flagg's a bad man. He is a bad dude.
I think you're underestimating their experience.
I am, because I don't trust not playing against quality talent all year long. And I'm not saying
and that's fair. And the reason that's fair is that, I mean, I can say, can they go deep? Heck, I mean, Gonzaga played in the West Coast Conference, made 2 title games since 2017. So of course they can go deep. The ACC was not good, but it was not the WCC. Although they did not have a St. Mary's in their league even. The WCC on the whole, you're playing lesser players in the course of that league. over time. I mean, Pepperdine and Loyola Marymount do not have as good of players as Pitt does, even if Pitt's not as good a team as they should be. And then you do have to play Clemson. And I would say that Clemson would certainly be their St. Mary's if they played them twice, but they only played them once. So that's a concern. But I mean, metrically, very close to the top on both offense and defense. They've got multiple first-round picks. They have the three obvious ones that will all be one and dones: Cooper Flagg, Kaman Malawach, and Con Knipple. Those guys will all be first-round picks this year. And then they have Malik Evans coming off the bench, who will be a first-round pick, I suspect, next year, who has been adding. Now, he's been adding significant contributions from the bench, but I don't know whether the numbers – I mean, I saw him do it in a big game against Auburn. I was in the gym, and so I know what he can do. But how much his recent numbers are skewed by the fact that they're all in 40-point blowouts, I can't say. But I do think they have enough. And experience-wise, Malik Brown is a fifth-year guy, I think. And I know he's at least a senior. He might be a fifth-year guy. And I love him as a player. I think he's fantastic. You've got, at this point, Tyrese Proctor is a third-year sophomore. A third-year junior. So you look at him, and he's not a young player either, not at this point. You've got, I don't know, some guy on the bench who used to play at Purdue and played in the championship game last year. There you go, Mason Gillis. Thanks, Fred.
I was already asked. Now, if Duke does win the national championship, does Purdue get to hang like a 6x3 piece of banner up so they can actually hang a national championship banner?
Oh. They did develop him. Can't take that away.
And they sent him away.
Well, I don't know if they kicked him out or whatever. But
pretty much, because they had to make room for the 6-man freshman incoming class that turned into 5. But that's what happened in essence. That was not part of his plan, of Matt's plan. And you have to respect that he's like stuck to his guns. Hey, this is how we're going to do this. But worked out good for Mason Gillis. I'm sure.
I mean, a year of free education at Duke, playing on one of the best teams in the country, and playing in one of the great venues. Now he's played in two of the great venues in college basketball. I'd say that's a pretty good little deal for Mason Gillis, and so they have experience. And it can't be said that young teams can't win it, because we've had two of them since 2012, when built around freshmen. And you can go back to 2003 as well to find another that was built around freshmen. Although that wasn't the one and done era, and only one of those players went immediately pro. So you can't say it can't happen. We've had it happen 3 times in this century, which now we've had like 23 tournaments, 24 tournaments. I think it's 23 in this century. So it certainly can be done.
Absolutely. And it's always fun to see who ends up doing it and how it gets done, because it never quite works out how any of us expect.
Yes.
And that's why it's so great. If it did, it wouldn't be fun. If it was all chalk, it wouldn't be fun. But that's why it's so hard to predict. And I love that. Let's see. I mentioned, we'll talk just briefly about it, but there's nothing. Indiana's coaching search is pretty silent, and it's, I don't want to say driving fans crazy, but it's just the desire to know something, anything. It pushes them towards any time a piece of information, no matter how incorrect it might be, goes up. Someone puts up a balloon, man, that thing is devoured. They were just devouring anything that comes out. And I just don't see any information coming out until it's time, mainly because Scott Dolson doesn't want it out for the sake of the other coach, the other team, the other school. And I mentioned that earlier before you joined us. I go, it's big to them. It could be detrimental to what you're trying to accomplish for that to get out. On top of that, plus these other teams, they're playing for something right now.
Oh, yeah.
And you do not want to be a disruption to that in any way.
The coaches that you want are think about it this way. Let's just use Grant McCasland as an example. Okay. You want Grant McCasland to lose the first game of the NCAA tournament and then hire him so you can have him sooner? Or do you want the guy who is good enough to win and advance a little bit so you can feel good about who you're hiring? It's kind of a catch-22. This is what you get into when you make a move early. You get the certainty that you need so that everything can go back to being about basketball, which is what happened at Indiana and a big part of why they're being successful. There was the exterior pressure, which had gotten really difficult. And I'm not saying unfair, but really difficult. And then there was the interior decision to say, okay, if this is going down, we're going down with guys who were playing for Indiana because we haven't had that for a little bit. And when they made the move to put Leal in the starting lineup, it changed the entire team's personality and has driven them forward to where they are now. Not safely in the field. Nobody's ever safe unless you're like up on the top 8 lines. You can't sit there and say we're good, but they're in good shape and will probably make it. And I think that has a lot to do with the people. People who want to go now. Are you sure you know? The reason this is happening is because is in some part because they have certainty now.
Yeah, I noticed the Big Ten it's of the 9 teams that I expect to get into the NCAA tournament, 7 of them are ranked. So they're good teams. They don't have many marginal teams. They're either pretty decent or not so good. With a couple in the middle.
I think that has to do with the fact that when you have so many significant teams, it's hard for teams like even Nebraska to get oxygen. Nebraska, a week ago, before they went to Columbus for that bubble game, they were in the field. They were not even in Dayton. On my bracket, they did not have to go to Dayton. They were not safely in, but they were, I think, the lone 11 seed that was not in Dayton. They were the last bye, as Joe Lunardi calls it. I don't like to think of it as a bye because like 64 teams get a bye. I don't like, but anyway, they were the one team that stands in that category. And then they lost 2 in a row, including one that got them eliminated from the Big Ten tournament. And I think was the end for them. I just don't see how the committee could say, well, you couldn't make the Big Ten tournament, but you could make ours. That's not going to happen. So that it shows you how challenging the league is, even at the bottom of the standings. There are still very good teams there. SC beat multiple NCAA tournament teams. One of them on the road. Iowa goes out and does what I did on Saturday, and it wasn't really close. In an arena where Nebraska does not lose very often, even with not great teams in some years. They went out and they took it to Nebraska. So I think the teams are capable, as is the case with LSU, for instance, or Texas, and to a lesser extent, South Carolina. They just can't get any oxygen in a league with 12, 13 really good teams. And in the case of the Big Ten,
yeah, that's 12, 13 out of what's only 16. So
right. And in the Big Ten, it's probably 10, 11 really good teams, including Nebraska in that. And then 4 or 5 that are pretty good, but just can't get the oxygen. And then one team in Washington that just wasn't very good this year. They invested a lot in a player who was expected to be outstanding and was not.
Kevin, K-Bro says, can Indiana be this year's North Carolina State? And if so, does Woodson change his mind? Well, first of all, his mind would have to be changed for him.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with no. I do not think that they can be. But who am I to say to stomp on somebody's dream? I hope you're doing well, K-Bro. Always with the good questions, though.
Yeah. He's the man.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday, and that means a visit by our good friend Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Big Ten, and Fox Networks. Make sure you're giving him a follow and keeping up with all his content everywhere he is, which is a lot. He's ubiquitous Mike, but we can't get enough. Looking at the bracket, Mike, for the Big Ten tournament, which begins tomorrow in earnest, with 3 games in the afternoon of the final 3 teams that made it in. And how about speaking of Nebraska doesn't even make the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
And they lose it on a tiebreaker. And I don't know what I don't remember what the tiebreaker was, but there were like 72 teams that were tied with the same record there in that last spot. And they were the odd man out, unfortunately, and which is shocking.
Really difficult.
It's shocking. I mean, it's shocking that Nebraska didn't make the Big Ten tournament. And I'm not cutting on Nebraska. I'm just saying how surprised. I'm like, wow, I know how decent of a team they are. And so is it with that many teams? Should they just have everybody in? Is it really that big of a deal since you're playing tomorrow? You don't start until 3:30 anyway. What the hell? Why not play a couple more games?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what went into that decision. I will say that it certainly created more interest in the final few games. I mean, that Iowa-Nebraska game was much more intensely followed than it might have been otherwise.
How about the Nebraska-Ohio State game? We went to 2 overtimes. They lose by a bucket.
Well, in that sense, it was not really about, when that game was played, it was not about getting into the Big Ten tournament. It was about getting into the big dance. It was a bubble game. Both teams had a shot. And so that was about that. But the Sunday game between Iowa and Nebraska was principally about getting that last spot in the Big Ten field. And it created a significant amount of interest. And I think it influenced how Iowa played. I think Iowa put an A game out there, and I think Nebraska felt the pressure. And that's, and pressure changes March. All the things that we talk about that happen, 95% of them, if not more, happen because of pressure. 5% happen because that team was way better than we thought they were, way better than anybody thought they were. We overlooked them, or we misseeded them, or whatever it might be. But then the other part of it, the biggest part of it, is game pressure. Purdue versus St. Peter's, played in a playground, in a high school gym, in a stadium, and no matter what the venue, 999 times out of 1,000, Purdue is winning that game. But play it as a 16-1, and all that pressure to advance is there, and Purdue with a little bit of a losing streak at that point in the tournament. And then all of a sudden the dynamic changes. And so, yeah, I think that makes a difference.
And I forgot about the Crown tournament. And to be honest with you, it was not that long ago that I could say I was today years old when I found out about the Crown tournament. I mean, I'm talking 3-4 weeks ago at max. No idea about this Crown tournament until I was like, what? So that's in essence for Big 12, Big 10. Is it and Big East?
Correct. They are the principal members of the field, but there will be others invited from other conferences.
I mean, this is going to pretty much take care of the NIT, right? I mean, I know it'll still be there, but it's now you've got the NIT, the Crown, the CBI, which is a joke. But yeah, the Crown, they just created their own tournament, but they did it in Las Vegas. They made it some glitzy. But what else you gonna do? You had the NIT, and it was like an old woman's worn out coat, just like, what are you gonna do with this? I'm not wearing that. So I guess they put some shine on it, and a team like, but then Nebraska, they probably won't even make the Crown, will they?
Probably not. I think they
that's sad.
because the Big Ten is guaranteed a certain number of spots, and they certainly can go beyond that if they wish. And I think they could invite Nebraska if they wished. I don't think there's a rule against it. Although I will be honest, I don't know everything about how they're going to compose that field. But I do think there's an appeal to it. If you're going to play some more games, why not play them in Vegas and get that week out there, week and a half out there, as opposed. Yeah, here's your choice, Jim. You don't get to go to the big dance, but you can go to Florida State to play a road game, or you can go to Vegas and everybody plays on a neutral floor. I know which one I'm taking if I'm 22 years old.
Oh, you
or in your 60s.
You're daggone Skippy. And it's for the teams, it's good to get more playing time for guys that are, well, if they're going to be there next year. That's a whole nother story. You don't know how much your roster is going to be left, but 16-team crown tournament takes place March 31st through April 6th. Now, I guess that lapses over top of the national championship. I can't remember when. I think it's the 5th and 6th this year. But anyway, it's right about the same time. It features schools from the Big 10, Big 12, Big East, like I said. In addition to at-large participants, teams that did not participate in the NCAA tournament eligible, with 2 automatic qualifiers coming from each participating conference. So the 2 autos, Ohio State, if they don't make the NCAA tournament, will be one from the Big 10, and I don't remember who was immediately following them right now in the
I keep seeing Northwestern pop up as a potential invitee on the various graphics that they do with my brackets. So that's a possibility, I think.
Well, and funny you mentioned Northwestern. Not to just jump around here, but Indiana's coaching search, Chris Collins is a name that has not gotten a ton of bounce to it, but he may be one of the best options out there.
He's one of the best coaches in college basketball, Jim.
He's done more with less than most coaches out there, because when you're at Northwestern or Vanderbilt or a school like that, their number one goal is to not win athletic contests. Not that they don't want to win. It's not their number one goal. It's not as sports driven as a lot of schools are, but they want to compete. And for them to have had the success in football, they've gone to the freaking Rose Bowl, which is difficult in the Big Ten Conference. They have done well under Chris Collins in basketball. He is a solid guy. I think he would be a good pickup, and maybe he's the best available option right now. I don't know, because I'm not sure who all is available. We don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who is truly available, but he's available.
Well, I think that it's hard to know who can be gotten, honestly, at this stage. I can tell you who won't be gotten. That's not usually hard. I mean, like when everybody was throwing Brad Stevens out as a candidate back when the whole thing. I wrote right away in my article about potential candidates that was ridiculous. He's making $11 million a year to not have to sweat over every win and loss.
Not going to stand in a high school gym all summer long.
I'm sure he still cares very much about whether the Celtics win or lose, but it's a little different when you're in the executive office than when you're on the bench. And I think that he likes that life. If he didn't want that life, he wouldn't have taken the promotion, or he would have said, okay, I'll be president, but I'm still coaching or whatever. So no, I think he likes this. And so I never thought that was a possibility. And there are coaches like Nate Oates, for instance, if they had been interested in him, or Bruce Pearl, whose name was thrown out. No, I mean, they've got great jobs. They're doing everything they could want to do in basketball. They're making lots of money. And if you say, hey, I'm thinking about it, before you even get to the end of Indiana, they're saying, here's another $1 million or whatever. I mean, that's not going to happen. But there are coaches out there who are, very capable, who are in very good jobs and having very good seasons, who may or may not be swayed because their leagues are not as powerful and as solidified as the Big Ten is. Whatever happens in the future, the Big Ten is going to be there. And I don't think that there's going to be the kind of calamity that people generally predict. We've lost one conference at the major level in the last 70 years or whatever. So we don't see that kind of calamity happen. But if there is, the Big Ten will be standing. And no one else can say that other than the SEC. So I do think that you can find coaches in the Big 12 or some other conferences the ACC that might be interested and that would look at this as an opportunity to be in a solidified circumstance with championship potential. And there's not a lot of those out there. There are more than there used to be because of name, image, and likeness, and because of the growth of football revenue as an influence. I mean, we had Florida win in 2006 and 07, and Florida would not have won a championship in the 90s or 80s. It just what the game was different then, but it's different now. So that you can win at Auburn or Alabama or Tennessee or you don't have you can win it at as we've seen you can win it at UConn. We've now seen 6 of those. So it's a little different now than it was, but Indiana still has great advantages over a lot of programs, facilities, interest, recruiting base. Still, what I learned in my 10 years living in Indiana is how well coached the typical Indiana player is relative to so many other places in the country. And that makes players better. That's why you can have multiple 5-stars from a state in Indiana. It's not a huge state. I mean, population-wise, it's not huge, but they keep turning out these guys that are Braylon Mullins and players like that who are tremendous talents, in part because they're great athletes, but also because they've been raised in the game of basketball.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday. Jim Coyle with you as always, and joined by the great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Big Ten, and Fox Networks. And where's this comment? I want to make sure I don't miss this one. Dusty Banner says, DeCourcy's making points that can't be argued. Boom. Mic drop. Absolutely. Where were we?
What I was talking about was that ubiquity of basketball in Indiana, Jim. And during the pandemic, when we couldn't really go anywhere, I was taking a lot of walks with my wife through our neighborhood, our old neighborhood in Fishers. And there were 2 neighborhoods that were adjacent, ours, and then another that was that was partially built and under construction. They kept adding new houses to it as we made our walks. And as we walked, it was about, on average, about every 3rd house. Now, we were a very suburban neighborhood, so there were lots of kids and such. We were a little older than most of our neighbors, let's put it that way. But there, almost every 3rd house had a basketball hoop. I mean, it was amazing. I couldn't believe.
I grew up where I was when I grew up as a kid in school and up into high school. We had a little neighborhood, and at the bottom of the circle. Oh yeah, it's there, baby. That's where it went down. And during the summer, it was about every day. Or we'd be up at the school, the elementary school that had outdoor courts, multiple outdoor courts. Or we'd be down at the ballpark. Little Georgetown, little town that's, it had one officer, no jail, didn't even have its own jail, no stoplights, but they had basketball courts, baby. And they were every night it was going. It's just, I always thought it was just like that everywhere. But it was just, it's just something that started, I guess, back in the days of harvesting and all of that. And football, this was not a football state. It was a basketball state, I guess.
Well, part of that, I suppose, is, again, population based. Harder to get 11 players than it is to get 5. And so that and so they gravitated toward that, and they had excellence. Branch McCracken brought a couple of national championships in, and that fueled it. But it's one of my favorite things about Indiana is how immersed in the game that the state is. And so I think that is when you are when everything is in the right place, that is an advantage. When everything is not in the right place, it's a disadvantage. It's harder to win when you don't have exactly the right coach and he or she is not doing exactly the right things. Then it's harder to win. And so that's where, in all honesty, they have to get this right because Indiana can't go through another 4 or 5 years of what has happened for most of the last 25.
No, because too many schools have shown, the example I thought of, Xavier. How many coaches in a row did Xavier hire that were successful? Just one after another, after another. It's like, gee whiz, they kept getting plucked, but because they were successful. I can't even remember the entire string of.
Well, I can give it to you. You went from Pete Gillen to Skip Prosser.
Yes.
From Skip Prosser to Thad Matta, from Thad Matta to Sean Miller, from Sean Miller to Chris Mack. And then they hired Travis Steele. Travis was a little young and did not succeed at quite the level he could have. He's now doing great work at Miami, Ohio. And then
they hired the right guy. They didn't bring in a crapper. It's like, oh man, that stands out to me because it's not easy to not make a mistake there. And
right.
They didn't. Indiana has done nothing but that, not always in the wrong coaches per se, but the wrong coach during the wrong situation or the wrong time. Timing has always been an issue for Indiana. And there's a lot. It seems like there's too much that goes into Indiana's coaching process prior to now. I think Scott Dolson is going to do fine being left to himself. Let him do what he needs to do. He has the experience now. I think that he knows what he's doing. And if people would just leave him alone, he'll be fine. He was a manager on a national championship team. He knows the importance of what it means to the school, to the town, to everything. How it's important that Indiana's good. They should be good. College basketball is better when Kansas and Indiana and Duke and North Carolina and Kentucky are fighting each other. You want other teams up there, but they still like to see people still like to see the Yankees and the Dodgers go at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is good for college basketball to have those teams as targets. I don't think it's in comparing them to baseball. I don't like the fact that in baseball there's an unfair advantage that can't be overcome. In basketball now, it's never been more even. You have to execute right, or someone else will, and that has not generally happened. It has periodically happened in those 25 years. But it's not generally happened at Indiana. And this is a great opportunity for them to get it right in this circumstance. They get the right person and the right coach. And it's a different deal at Indiana than it is at some places. And I remember, I knew Arch Miller for a very long time, and I still like him and think he's a terrific basketball coach. But when they went for him at that point, I was concerned about how someone who was naturally not, I don't know, shy is a strong word, but naturally not outgoing. It's not really part of his personality. How would he handle all that attention? And I remember going to his press conference. I came back from the regional down in Memphis where Carolina beat Kentucky on a buzzer shot, got off the plane, drove straight to Bloomington so that I could be at his press conference. And I convinced myself that with how he handled a press conference, that just by focusing on the game and on the sport, that he could get through all the rest of it. And it just didn't ever really quite work. That they did some good things, but they didn't quite get it to work. And with Kelvin, I knew at the time that it was a mistake, although I didn't know how profound it was, because Kelvin Sampson was one of the best coaches in the history of college basketball. But you can't, at Indiana, 6 years after what happened with Bob Knight, hire a coach that his most ardent supporters would be opposed to, because he had been, because the program in which he was in charge was under an NCAA investigation that had not been completed, that it had not been adjudicated yet when he was hired. They had not gotten to the end of the process, and the end of the process came, I think, 2 months after he was hired. You can't hire that guy in that circumstance. You have to get a coach nearly as good as Kelvin that doesn't have that on his resume at the moment. If you hire Kelvin 5 years after that, you're fine, because what happened at Oklahoma wasn't that bothersome. It just was not something that you could accommodate at Indiana.
And the fact that he did it right, turned right around and did it with that. I know it was a stupid rule, but that's not the point. It was a rule. It was a rule he got caught for, and he just turned right around and did it again. And I'm like, wow, that was pretty brazen. I knew he was trying to win, but
he was trying to win, and he thought he had a workaround. Is basically what it came down to. He thought he had a workaround, and he didn't. As the committee the Committee on Infractions adjudicated it, he didn't have a workaround. But all of this has led to where we stand now, and I think that this is, I said, it's an opportunity, but it's one that they have to seize. And I do think there are
ironic thing, Mike, is where Dusty Banner says Chris Beard deserves redemption. And he is, I'll say, a fan favorite by a large portion of the fan base. And I have said over and over, it is my belief that just will not happen. And it's not I don't know that it's for one reason, to be honest with you, but they have access to information I don't have. And I'm not talking about just about the incident that everyone's thinking about. Who knows? It may just be fit. It may be something else that Scott doesn't see. Or like, I don't know, but I don't see it happening. We'll find out. But we will see you in Indianapolis on Friday. I can't wait. Looking forward to it as the Big Ten tournament gets underway. And anything until then for you?
We will announce our All-America team on Wednesday at sportingnews.com. Jim,
I have to ask.
You didn't have enough assists this year. That's the problem.
I have to ask every year.
And we will announce our national player and coach of the year on Thursday. And we also will, I will be at BTN on Saturday and Sunday as part of the pregame and postgame shows on BTN for the Big Ten tournament on Saturday and Sunday. And you can find me on Fox, FS1, and Fox on Thursday and Friday night talking about brackets during the intermissions for the Big East tournament.
Does Indiana have to win to get in, or are they solidly in? They're playing Oregon.
They don't have to win, but it would be advisable to go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity. You open the door.
Enough up that if they lost, do they get bumped to the play-in game?
I think I have them in Dayton as it stands. But you don't want to give them you don't want to give the committee any reason to put to put Carolina in over you, because you kind of know that they'd love to. Carolina is Carolina, and Indiana is a great story too. Maybe who's really in jeopardy would be Ohio State. They've got to play Iowa, which played really well, and then they have to, presuming they take care of that. If they don't, they have to sweat, and if they do, then they have to play Wisconsin, which also means sweating. So they both have challenges there, but I think that's true of every bubble team. Xavier, which is the last team in for me and just about everybody, Xavier has to play Marquette in their quarterfinals at the Big East tournament. So there are no easy games in these bubble situations.
They're not supposed to be, baby. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Correct.
Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Big Ten and Fox Networks. As always, buddy, we appreciate you. We'll see you Friday up in Indianapolis.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Hello. all sports fans, Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.